Good afternoon, dear attendees. We are starting our webinar today. Can you hear us? Can you see us?
Yes.
Yes, everything is good. So this is our agenda for today. We have the presentation introduction, 5 minutes introduction. Then we would have the presentation of Ioannis from Nova. Later, we would have the presentation of Kostas from Nova, and then we would have 20 minutes for Q&A session. In 3 p.m., we are planning to close the session. Also, we would like to inform you that January 23, we would have another webinar for the Siemens use case in the DataBri-X project. Thank you. Now, Kostas. Now, Ioannis would start the presentation.
Okay, thank you very much for this. We will brief you about the DataBri-X project, the vision of it, but also our use case. So thank you very much for your participation. Some words about Nova. Nova is a big telecom pay TV provider in Greece. We belong to the United Group. United Group is a big telecom and pay TV group spanning activities through countries in southeastern Europe. So we have more than 4 million customers. We have a revenue share exceeding 2 billion. So you understand we are quite big in the area, and we try to promote new services as well. All these services are based on data analysis, following analysis of the behavior of the people. But we also see data as an asset as well. So that's why we are involved in DataBri-X, but also in other domain projects as well. Next slide, please. So Nova, as we said before, is the Greek, I would say, branch of United Group. We have activities in Greece. We have almost 2,000 employees, and we have a big client base, both in the retail but also in the business sector. And by business, we mean SMEs, which is a great amount of our customer base, but also big companies and organizations as well. Next slide, please. So we will try to brief you a bit about the DataBri-X concept and what we intend to do with DataBri-X. So DataBri-X, it's a project that started 1 year ago. Now we are in a quite mature stage, but still during the proposal stage, we knew exactly what we're doing. We are a group of companies and organizations, at least the majority of them, who have a long-standing collaboration in data projects overall. So through DataBri-X, we want to advance the maturity of data tools and services and promote a data sharing environment, a data sharing ecosystem. We rely our services on IDSA and Gaia-X standards. We think that is a big asset, all the standards and modules that have already been implemented in the area. And what we need to do is capitalize on the knowledge of this and advance the data modeling, the data sharing tools and architectures, and give also the business perspective in this endeavor. So we want to, through this project, to promote these tools, to create a holistic approach on the data lifecycle management and compliance, And of course, last but not least, all this endeavor and the processes that we will analyze later on, they will aim at minimizing the energy footprint, but also increasing policies enforcement in data projects, and policies may vary depending on the needs of these projects, such as cost, energy consumption, and furthermore. And through this, we would like to promote new business models. Next slide, please. So, in brief, we have a big consortium of comprising of 14 partners coming from academia, from SMEs, from industries. All of us are well blended. We have complementary knowledge and perspective about the project and the tools, and we are also committed for the exploitation. Our leader is the Athena Institute in Greece, which has a big history in data projects, especially in the NLP sector, but in other sectors as well. Next slide, please. So, which are the objectives of the project? First of all, in the project, as we said before, we capitalize on relevant previous initiatives. In previous projects, we have numerous projects that we have participated, and through these projects, we have mature experiences, but also implementations as well. For instance, trust is one of them, safety is another project, but many, many more. So we have experience on the modules, IDSA and Gaia-X modules. We have experience on privacy issues. And last but not least, on data spaces and data exchange forums. So on top of this knowledge, we have a quite innovative, we think, methodology on data management. We try to have a paradigm shift on classical waterfall data management processes, and would like to introduce specific knowledge from data projects into this data management model and tool environment. So we would like, first of all, to give flexibility to data owners, to define the key values and weights of each phase of the data management life cycle. We would like to involve and have the flexibility to involve specific tools depending on each phase policy, but other issues as well taken into account, and to address also issues such as data ownership, data provenance, verification, veracity, and so on and so forth. Because we believe that not only technology should be promoted, technology as such may be obsolete. We have to bind technology with business perspective, with privacy perspective, with ownership perspective, and of course, commercialization perspective. Technology with business aspect will give the potential for DataBri-X outcome, but other similar endeavors as well. Next slide, please. So, in brief, and then I will hand over to my colleague Kostas, who will dive into the methodology, but also our use case as well. So, in DataBri-X, we want to implement a toolbox, but it's also an environment. It's not a static toolbox that can be used on a specific environment. We want to engage data spaces in various formats. Of course, our biggest target will be IDSA Gaia-X, but also others as well who are open. We have a process of collaborating, of advancing the data project, but also set a firm framework. In each framework, in each phase, we can choose the appropriate tools depending on the policies that we want to adopt, and also have a flow of phases that matches the need of our sector. Last but not least, as we said before, and we have to emphasize on this environment is quite open, so we are able to include tools evaluate tools, of course, replace tools, and also use alternative tools in various phases according to our needs and according to the policies that we will adopt. And in every project, we aim through this consistent environment to have a seamless adoption of the end-to-end methodology. In this way, we will assist industries to use in a straightforward manner an adaptive tool to their needs, but also SMEs to promote their applications in the environment. Last but not least, this environment capitalizes on the data that exists and will be augmented in the various data stages that data spaces that we involve. And of course, we are open to augment it with additional data spaces as well. So following this, I will give the floor to my colleague Kostas, who will brief you about the methodology and the specifics of our use case. Thank you.
Thank you, Yanis, for the comprehensive overview. I'm going to take it from here. Now, before we dive in to the details of the use case of Nova, it is a good starting point to try and see how the whole DataBri-X toolbox is going to be utilized, not only from our use case, but from all the use cases and the platform as a whole. So what you see here on the left is a diagram of the Gen plane. Gen plane is a visual planning and management tool that is being developed for the DataBri-X project, and it is equipped with extensive automation, integration, interoperability, and reporting capabilities. So what Gen plane is, it's a tool that is going to be used to orchestrate and integrate all the other tools inside the toolbox in order to seamlessly connect them together and allow the use cases that are developed as part of the project, but also other use cases that will follow, use all the tools inside the toolbox in a seamless manner. You can see that what we have on the left is a two-dimensional Cartesian-like plane, and the x-axis represent phases and disciplines. So we can see that we have identified on the x-axis 4 phases, which is conception, implementation, publishing, and preservation. This is done in order to try and replicate the whole phase of the deployment of a use case as part of the DataBri-X toolbox. And when we use this Gen plane tool, we try and identify all those phases and the disciplines with what we want to achieve via the toolbox. And then an execution plan is developed, and the correct tools from inside the toolbox are chosen in order to be run as part of this execution plan. So at the end of the day, what we have here is a way to define our use case in terms that are understandable by the DataBri-X knowledge graph. And it's a pretty easy and an easy way to try and run our use case seamlessly through the toolbox. So now let's move on more specifically to our role in DataBri-X. We were chosen and we wanted to be involved in this project in order to try and utilize the DataBri-X toolbox and the capabilities it provides in order to do a lot of things for our company. It's not focused on one single thing, but we identified a lot of potential areas that we can try and improve inside our company via this project. Those areas that we identified are that we want to try and improve the user profiling that we do to our subscribers. We want to improve the infrastructure performance and to better predict infrastructure failures. We want to try and increase our social media brand equity and in general enhance our customer satisfaction. You can see that our goals here are very broad and wide. So for that reason, we're going to see in the next slides that we tried and we divided our use case into sub-scenarios in order to try and cover all those not so matching areas that we want to take a look at. Also, since DataBri-X is a project that is about data spaces and we utilize data spaces, as part of our use case, Nova will have its own data spaces in the media domain as a telecom operator, and also will act as both a provider and a consumer in this data space. Moving on, before we dive into what are the scenarios, it's good to have an overview of the tools that we selected from the DataBri-X toolbox that we want to utilize in our scenarios. This is not an extensive list of all the tools that DataBri-X contains, but it's a list of the tools that we decided that we need as part of the initial scenarios we want to execute. This list, of course, can be extended as more tools are added in the toolbox or as our needs evolve. So we have first the TweetHorde, which is a data collection and analysis tool for campaigns on Twitter, or X as it is currently called. We also have the Pool Party Suite, which is a suite with a lot of modeling, annotation, and analysis capabilities. Then we have a module that converts speech to text, and you're going to see in one of the specific scenarios that we need a module like that in order to continue our analysis. Then we have the Cosmos Forecaster, which is a time series service engine that can forecast system infrastructure, usage logs, application logs, or even user records. Then we have a dataset transformer, which is a connector that is utilized in order to connect datasets that are not compatible from one tool to another. We have DataViz, which is a practical UI to showcase the results of all the processing that is happening and to visualize those results in an easy way so that our analysts can take advantage of it. And finally, we have a specific helper module that is about defining a vocabulary in order to further annotate and enhance the datasets that we provide to the DataBri-X toolbox. You're going to see all those tools in action in a bit in all the scenarios. So let's move on to scenario number 1, which is the social media brand equity and product reputation analysis. So what we're trying to do here is try to utilize the social data that are relevant from Nova and try to do summarization and even find some potential influencers in order to include them in our marketing strategy. On the left, you can see the tool workflow for this scenario. We're going to go step by step. On the left-hand side, we have the social media data that are relevant for Nova. Those are harvested from Twitter and are done via a very simple keyword search for Nova or similar useful keywords for us. You're going to see on the top that we have the pool party filtering. So this is a specific module from the pool party suite that along with the vocabulary definition we have on the bottom, it annotates the datasets and can filter out those datasets that are not useful to us. So as a good example, there are tweets that are about Nova, but in an astrological sense, like the supernova, the star. So we don't want those tweets because they are not relevant to us and are going to litter our analysis. So this kind of filtering, along with some date filtering and age filtering that is relevant to us, is done at this point. Then those annotated and filtered datasets are fed both to TweetHorde in order to do summarization and also to Pool Party Suite, which is doing a sentiment analysis. Finally, the results from both those modules are fed to the DataViz in order to be visualized in a simple way for our analysts to try and get some results and make some decisions based on those analyses. Moving on to scenario 2, this is the call center chat analysis interaction improvement. We're talking about a completely different data set. Now we are focusing on our call centers and we're using recordings from anonymized recordings of interactions between our customers and our call center operators and want to improve those interactions with the customers. So what we're doing here is first, we are doing an error vocabulary definition and also a speech-to-text conversion in order to move the audio files to text. And then we feed them again to the pool party suite to do error classification and sentiment analysis, take the results and feed them to DataVis in order to visualize them. Finally, scenario 3, which also has two sub-scenarios. This is the user plane records and infrastructure logs analysis. Both those scenarios utilize the Cosmos forecaster, but with different inputs. The first sub-scenario uses the Nova user plane records. These are anonymized datasets that describe which kind of usage a user does to our network. Does our user need more downlink bandwidth? Does it need more uplink? Does he make a lot of phone calls? Does he use SMSs? All that kind of information exists there. So we utilize the Cosmos forecaster in order to create a profile for all those users, and in order to try and tailor make our offerings to them in order to better fit their usage and their needs. But also, we're trying to take advantage of the Cosmos forecaster tool by utilizing infrastructure logs from various network points from the Nova infrastructure. What we can achieve with this is we can generate network usage patterns and also try to predict infrastructure failures and evaluate what-if scenarios. So for specific parts of the Nova infrastructure, we can see when some failures are about to happen or statistically are about to happen. So we can feed this information to our engineering team and they can be better prepared or try to alleviate this and avoid the failure altogether. So this is for the three scenarios we are trying to use DataBri-X for. Now you can see that we have a specific and concrete plan in place in order to test and utilize the DataBri-X toolbox. The project started in October of 2022, and the first 6 months were dedicated to planning our use case and defining the requirements and what we need to get out of the use case. And then since last month, the cycle 1 testing has begun. You can see here that we are at the beginning of cycle 1 testing. We already have some encouraging results, but we want to continue using this and trying to increase the datasets that we feed into the system and see how this goes. And this cycle of testing will end on May. Then we have a small window to try and evaluate the results of cycle 1 and decide which are the adjustments that are needed to happen for cycle 2, which will happen in 2025. And then we, as part of the project and as well for ourselves, we have defined some KPIs that we want to have as success factors for the use case. We have identified two types of KPIs. On the left-hand side, you can see an example of a system-level KPI. So this is about the energy footprint that the toolbox has. So as part of the project, one of the main goals of the project is to aim the energy consumption of the toolboxes and the whole process. So you can see that we target to have a mean reduction of energy consumption of 5%. On the right-hand side, we see an example of a use case level KPI. So this is specific to our use case. And for example, we can see that we want to try and achieve via the DataBri-X toolbox to generate 40 different user profiles and try to tailor make our offerings to those 40 users specifically. And I think that was a good overview of the use case. You can see our names here, both for Yannis and myself, and our emails. So if you have further questions, feel free to send them as our email or, of course, post them in the chat here. And as a closing remark from me, I would like to point out that the last use case of the DataBri-X toolbox is to be presented on the 23rd of January. So if this use case sounded interesting and the whole idea of the DataBri-X toolbox sounded interesting, feel free to register for this one as well. So you can see another use case from a completely different field. This is about the energy domain. And that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Kostas, for the great presentation. Thank you, Ioannis. We start our Q&A session. If we have some questions, please raise the hand or write it down in the chat, and we would like to answer. For the moment, we don't have any questions. So maybe one question from me. How do you see, Kostas, the contribution with IDSA for the telecommunication pilot?
I think it's a very important part of the project, and it's very nice that we do not feel, let's say, isolated as a project. It's nice to feel that we're doing something that can be used as a part of a greater ecosystem. And since we are in close collaboration with IDSA, and as you know, we presented the use case also in the ecosystem call of IDSA, it's very interesting to see that there are other people out there that are, I think that what we do is important work, and also that there are many collaboration opportunities using a data space. You can see that there are other people in the same domain as you trying to do the same thing. So it's always interesting to try and do something as a group. So I think it's very, very important.
Thank you for the answer. We have one question from Petros Petro. How do you plan to validate the use case beyond the KPI targets? Thank you.
I think I can take this.
Yeah, probably around you, and then I can contribute, please.
Yeah. So that's a good question, because I have presented only the KPIs, but we do not plan to stick to that. What we wanted to do is probably closer to cycle 2, when we have a more concrete usage of the platform. We want to roll out some questionnaires or even some direct stakeholder interviews in order to try and see from the people that will actually use the platform from Nova, what is their opinion and how much this has impacted their work. So a good example would be our call center agents, that because we're going to try and suggest them some improvements based on what we have found in the project. So after implementing those changes, we want to know what was the impact. Did this indeed work for the best for them? Was it something that changed their everyday life? Was it something that was beneficial to our company? So this is something that we plan to do closer to cycle 2, a round of stakeholder interviews and questionnaires.
Thank you for the answer. Ioannis, you wanted to add something?
No, I think it is completely answered, and what we aim to propose, of course, we cannot test everything within the duration of the project, so we try to focus on key KPIs that belong to the scope of the project, but also can demonstrate the value of the end-to-end infrastructure. But as you can easily see from the various scenarios that Kostas has the kindness to present, it's we try to address the whole life cycle of our endeavor. So we have KPIs, of course, that measure the technical part or the usage of the infrastructure or the value or how fast we analyze the data. But also in the business perspective, as Kostas said, we want to increase performance. And by that, we will have additional business KPIs such as performance of our end agents, or even penetration of our content and our services in various target groups. And also patterns, probably comparison with other similar endeavors in abroad to see how effective our policies are. And all this should be done and can be done through interoperable data spaces. And this is one also of the reasons that we capitalize on IDSA, as Kostas said before. We consider it as a mature technology, IDSA and Gaia-X. And furthermore, one of the most valuable things is that we think that these environments, these proposals, have been adopted by a wide range of the industry, so it gives us the go ahead into deploying such data spaces and collaborate with other industries as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the answer. You partly answered for the next question, which is what is the main reason Nova is pursuing this use case? What are the benefits for the business in this case? So maybe you would like to add something about business benefits. Thank you.
Certainly. This use case it's indicative. I would say that I would prefer first to answer why we enter in the project, because the use case demonstrates part of the nice, good outcome of the project. We believe in data spaces, we believe in collaboration, we have entered and we will enter a data environment, and we do have data analysis capabilities. But still, no matter if we generate terabytes of data per day from the mobile sector, from the infrastructure of the sector, but also the interaction in the pay TV sector, the interaction with our clients, we need to have further access to tools. And we need to expand our reach to the outside world where other businesses like us operate, and we need to compare data. So that's why we entered DataBri-X. We believe that data spaces are there and we will proliferate, and we need to find a common way that this data will interoperate through the knowledge that various SMEs out there will provide. So with DataBri-X, we aim to promote exactly this: interoperation, flexibility, and adoption of tools and policies. Through this use case, which is a multidisciplinary, I would say, use case, touches upon all aspects, or at least quite a few aspects of our endeavor. We try to demonstrate that this DataBri-X endeavor, this DataBri-X project, and DataBri-X toolbox will have significant input in several core activities of our business. So this is more or less my answer. If you would like me to elaborate on specific issues, I will be more than happy to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the answer. Until now, we don't have new questions, so please raise your hand or just write down the question in the chat. We still have the time for the webinar. So I guess that's not the case right now. So then I would suggest to close the session for today. Again, thank you very much for attendance, and thank you very much for the great presentation. See you in the January for the Siemens pilot. Thank you and have a good day.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.